Hi, so welcome back to this video, and this is an extension of the previous video in which we had added a menu option to our Google Sheet to go to the next sheet. So as you can see, we are having 5 sheets here named as number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if we have in the previous video we had added this switch menu and one of the menu options under it, that is next sheet, which takes us to the next sheet. So we were at sheet 1, now we have come to sheet 2. As you can see, it is active, and likewise if we click again, it will take us to sheet number 3. So in case you have not watched the previous video, so please watch. And now let's add another menu option here, that is previous sheet, because right now we are only able to go to the next sheet, or if we are at the last sheet, for example at sheet number 5, so from here if we click next sheet, we can land back to the first sheet. Okay, but right now we are not having any option to go back to the previous sheet, right? So we want to add such an option. So it's very simple now. If you had watched previous video, you understand this code. Otherwise, please watch the previous video. So now we will just add another item to this menu switch. Okay. In the previous video, we had added this item next sheet, which executes the function next sheet as defined here, and it takes us to the next sheet. Now we want to add another menu item which takes us to the previous sheet. So just copy this function, this line of the function, press enter, paste it, and now define it as, say, previous sheet, and the function as, say, previous sheet, right? And now copy this function. See, we have to do the things fast and smart, so no need to write whole of the function again. So just copy it, paste it, and do the modifications as per the logic. Now if you watched the first video in this series, so I told you that we cannot have the same name for multiple functions within a given code script. So this we need to define as previous sheet. Okay, so that once the user clicks on this menu item previous sheet, this function previous sheet gets executed, which is defined here. So now this variable is okay, sheet num, which gives us the name of the current sheet. And now let's define another variable, that is previous sheet num. So now this will again parse it in the form of an integer, and then we want to go to the previous sheet. Okay, so previous sheet number will be, so for example, if we are having sheet 4, we are on sheet 4 now, previous sheet will be sheet number 3, right? So we need to now subtract 1 from the current sheet or sheet num so as to go to the previous sheet. Okay, now again we want to ensure that once we are at the first sheet, and if we go to the option previous sheet, okay, which will be added once we run this function, once we save this function. So we want to ensure once we have reached the first sheet, then again if we click previous sheet option from this menu item, then it should go to the last sheet. In case we do not do that, or if we don't define this condition, then it will throw an error if we are at the first sheet and we click on going to previous sheet, right? So this also we had seen in the previous video, right? So let's try to see this in case uh, we are on the first sheet. So we want to specify that if sheet, this will be previous sheet num. So we want to define that if this previous sheet num, which will be current sheet minus 1. So if current sheet is 1, 1 minus 1 will be 0, which is not available in our sheets. So we want to define that if the previous sheet num calculated in this statement is less than 1, then it should go to the previous sheet which is numbered as the highest sheet number, which is 5 here. Okay, so we want to take it to sheet number 5. Okay, and then it will activate that particular sheet which is calculated with previous sheet num. So we need to rename it here as well. Okay, and now for a while, just let's try to remove this, save this, and now you can see we'll be having, okay, we need to run this actually once. So once we have run, we have got another function here, another menu item here, that is previous sheet. So let's say we are at sheet number 3. At sheet number 3, if we click on previous sheet, it takes us to sheet number 2. If we click on next sheet, it takes us to sheet number 3 again. Now let's go to previous sheet, that is sheet 2. Again previous sheet, it will take us to sheet 1. Again, if we click previous sheet, it will throw an error that cannot read properties of null, read activate, because activate is basically passing the sheet number which is equal to previous sheet number, and previous sheet number is the current sheet minus 1. So the current sheet is right now 1. So 1 minus 1 will be 0. So previous sheet number will be 0 as per this statement. And when it goes to activate, where we have defined to get the sheet name by previous sheet number, so it passes 0. So it throws an error that cannot read properties of null, reading activate, that it cannot read the properties of this activate variable because there is no sheet number which is numbered as 0. Alright, so now let's add back the condition here that if previous sheet number is less than 1, that means as soon as this is calculated as 1 minus 1, that is 0, then it should take us to the sheet number which is 5. Okay, so it will pass the previous sheet number as 5. So when we'll go to the next statement, activate, now it will pass this previous sheet number as 5 instead of 0. Alright, and since 5 is present, so it will take us to sheet number 5. Now let's try to save and run this. Right, so dismiss this. Now when we click here sheet number, at sheet number 1, when we click previous sheet, now it will not throw error, it will take us to sheet number 5, so that it works in a round robin manner. Now let's add another sheet here. Let me add some data here, say sheet 5. Okay, now let's add another sheet. Okay, maybe sheet 6. Let's rename it 6. And see, here we have numbered the sheets. I mean, we have named rather the sheets as different numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and accordingly this code will work. But if you are having some different conventions for the sheet names instead of these numbers, then you might have to do some modifications in this code. Okay, so let's say this is sheet 7 and this is say sheet 6, just for your easy reference and to distinguish between these in case you don't look at the bottom. Okay, so now let's try to, once we are at sheet number 1, now ideally we want that once we are at sheet number 1, that is the first sheet, and when we say previous sheet, it should go to the last sheet, that is sheet number 7. But you see it has come to sheet number 5 instead of sheet number 7. Why so? Because here in our condition we have defined that if the previous sheet number is less than 1, it should take the previous sheet number as 5. Okay, that instead of if here it calculates and get a value of less than 1, then it should replace that value with 5. Okay, so we need to actually make it 7. That is our last sheet. Okay, now if we save this and run this, so now we have said that if here we get the value of previous sheet num as less than 1, then it should consider the previous sheet num as 7 and pass it here, so that the sheet num which is named as 7 gets activated. Right, now let's go to sheet 1 and click on previous sheet. So we have come to sheet 7. If we click next sheet, we'll come to sheet 1. Again, if we go to next sheet, we'll go to sheet 2, sheet 3, and so on. And likewise, if we are at sheet 6, click next sheet. Let me click it. Okay, so you see now it's saying when we are at sheet 6, it's taking us to first sheet. Why not the 7th sheet? Because we have said that whenever the sheet num is next sheet num is greater than 5, so it should take us to sheet number 1. Instead of that, even if we go to sheet 5 and then also run, it will still take us to sheet number 1. Why? Because we have defined this condition as we had defined in the previous video, because in the previous video we were having the maximum sheet number as 5. Now we are having up to 7, so we'll define it as 7, that if the next sheet number calculated is greater than 7, then take us to sheet number 1. And here we have said that if the previous sheet number calculated is less than 1, then take us to previous sheet number 7, so that it acts in a round robin manner. Now let's try to save it and run it once. Now it is a completely working system. So if you are at sheet number 1 and you say next sheet, you go to sheet 2. Suppose you are at sheet 6, you say next sheet, you go to sheet 7. Again you say next sheet, you go to the first sheet, because after sheet number 7 there is no more sheet having value greater than 7. So it takes you to sheet 1. And while you are at sheet 1 and you say previous sheet, it will take you to sheet 7. Again, if you click previous sheet, it takes you to sheet 6. Right? Now, I hope you have understood how this works. And in case you want to use the same sheet name conventions, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So you can exactly copy this code from the description of this video and just take care of these variables in the if condition. Right, otherwise the rest of the code will work well. So this, in the next sheet case, this should be equal to the highest sheet number, which is, for example, 7 right now. If we add another sheet and rename it as 8, then we need to update it to 8. That once it has come to more than 8, then it should take to the first sheet. And likewise, in the case of previous sheet function, we need to define when the sheet number calculated is less than 1, then it should take to the last sheet. Okay. And in case your sheet number does not start from 1, it maybe starts from 2, then here you need to have 2, and here also you need to have 2. So just take care of the variables we have passed in this if condition. Otherwise, the rest of this script will work well if you are having the similar conventions to name your sheets, that is as per numerals, numbers. Okay. So thanks for watching this video. You can use this code to implement in your case, and we'll meet in the other video. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a good day.